Hey, everybody. Welcome to another Microsoft Unboxed podcast. This is number 14. I am your host today, Kareem Anderson. I'm joined by.
David Allen, folks, we have made it 14 weeks, and I want to thank you. Straight up, I want to thank everybody that watches our content, listens, leave comments, and watches the shorts that we put out. It's greatly appreciated.
Yeah, definitely. This week's going to be probably a short one. We didn't have a ton of Microsoft news. They are in sort of a lull. I'm sure they're getting ready for the big developer conference, which we will talk about in a few minutes. So we have news about the industry, the competitors, other things going on. So please stay tuned for that. If you're not interested in that, you can probably skip to certain sections where we do talk about Microsoft tangentially. We do have one specific story about Build. So let's just get you into what we will be talking about so you know whether or not to stay or go enjoy the rest of your day. We're going to be talking about Google making its AI editing tools available to everybody. And I specifically mean, I think that's going to be for mobile, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
I think, yeah. So they do have an editing suite for desktop, which I think is Snapseed. It's cross-platform. I don't know if those features will be featured in that. We will be talking about Xbox bringing in new games hubs to PC players only. I feel a bit slighted as a console player, but hey, I get to sit on my couch and play.
Xbox has those hubs.
Is it?
Yeah, Xbox had them first.
Oh, okay. I thought these were a little slightly different. We'll be talking about Google's new Axion CPU. They are doing their own customization with ARM as well. We'll see where that. Google hasn't necessarily relied on Intel for a bunch of stuff. Yes, they produce some Chromebooks and work stuff out with them, but they're creating their own server chips, which could be an issue for Intel. We'll explore that a little bit more. We're talking about Microsoft Build Session and all the hints at Windows 11 AI and ARM development focus. We're seeing a big, or at least a number of sessions that are focusing on Windows and ARM, which is a good sign, especially over the past few years where they've relegated Windows to its one-off fall show and never really talked about it at Build, not in any detail. Lastly, we're going to be rounding out with Intel has some big claims about its next Core Ultra chips. We'll see how they stack up against what's about to come out from Qualcomm and eventually AMD, I think later in the year. And then lastly, we're going to talk about Canva and Affinity, which partnered up. And again, this is sort of old news. This was about 2 weeks ago, but I wrote a piece about what this could lead to and how a perpetual license is always probably preferred than a subscription one. And with that being said, let's get into it. Let's get you guys going. What is our first story, David?
Well, I'm going to go ahead and jump right into the Google's making the AI editing tools that if you're a Pixel user, you know exactly what I'm talking about, that these tools come default on Pixel phones as a perk of owning a genuine Google built manufactured phone. So what we have is starting May 15th, these tools such as Magic Eraser, Unblur, Sky Suggestions, Color Pop, HDR Effects, Portrait Blur, Portrait Light, Cinematic Photos, Collage Editor, and Video Effects are being made to all Google users. There is one catch. You get 10 saves, and I'm just making an assumption here that what Google calls a save is you can use the feature on your content, look at your content, decide whether you like it or not, and if you save it to keep it, I'm assuming that is what they mean by a save. And if you save it to keep it, it's going to take one of your saves away from you. You get 10 free saves a month. If you want more than that, of course, here's another way that we're going to see some payments for some of these AI tools that we're seeing out there. You can get the Google One subscription for $19.99 a month. That includes, it's got to be the 2 terabyte or higher subscription. They're selling this based on storage. terabyte cloud storage saves, and I will throw something in there that I saw this morning that we haven't had a chance to put up on the site yet. If you start looking at these Google packages and realize, oh, there's a VPN over there, that VPN would really, help me to be a part of my package. No, Google has put out a memo this morning saying that VPN, they called it VPN1, that is a part of the package, will no longer be available by the end of the year based on the fact that, as they put it, nobody used it. So if you want these AI features and you say, well, the VPN would be nice, I'll put down the $20 a month, you will eventually lose the VPN by the end of the year. So keep that in mind.
Yeah, I'm all for these features. The 10 saves is kind of a little lame in my opinion, but hey, Google's got to start somewhere with their pricing, I suppose, in order to justify the resources necessary to produce these kind of things. Like I said, 10 seems a bit low for me, but that's how they do the upselling the packages. But we'll see where this lands once Samsung starts charging for their AI features, because they do have a lot of similar AI editing tools in the Galaxy devices, and I know that they outsell Pixel devices by it's like 3-to-1 or something like that. So sort of with the Apple inertia of certain things, we'll see how many people decide to pay for that, and if Google will see a rise with their own subscriptions because people are now accustomed to paying for video editing tools. I don't necessarily know, and I wrote this in a review that I may even talk about later, of the S24 Ultra, how often these AI tools will be used. I mean, I know before AI editing tools were a thing, even people who are photographers or video or photo editors, when they take photos on their phones, they tend to just stay on the phone. There isn't a lot of post editing or processing necessary. I mean, again, there are some who are professionals about this, and they know how to use all of the angles and the lighting on their phones and the environments to create masterpieces, and they take these off of their phone and go and do some amazing work on their PCs or whatever, and produce some amazing images. I don't know how many people are doing that on their phone and their 6-inch screen to do all that editing and stuff like that. So I don't know if this 10 saves will even hurt Google, or help or hurt Google in the end anyway. But I'm interested to see.
Sorry to cut you off. I don't think people are going to use it. And I'm going to be bluntly honest. I read this story and I thought about my own photo taking process, which is not very much. I don't take a whole lot of photos compared to some people. And you're right. The processing on the device is usually enough. And I don't see people saying, well, I'm going to spend $20 a month to edit my photos with these AI effects. What I think people are going to do, they're going to go to the Instagrams of the world, the Facebooks of the world, where they post these photos, and those services have the AI built into them because they are able to subsidize that idea with those ads that you're looking at.
Oh yeah, I totally agree with you.
I think it leans more that way.
Speaking of which, I wrote about Canva and Affinity and Adobe this week, and albeit a bit later than when it was announced, but I came across it and thought it was something we should all talk about. You're asking yourself, scratch your heads like, hey, how does this even relate to Microsoft? Well, I know that Microsoft pushes Canva a lot as an alternative to its own Microsoft Designer suite. So for those of you who are on PC and you're looking for a tool that isn't Adobe, Microsoft does push towards Canva and maybe Clipchamp as kind of, alternatives for that. With that being said, I think I want to say maybe a week and a half, almost 2 weeks ago, Canva bought Affinity. And then for those of you who don't know or maybe aren't up on it, the Affinity software editing software was really big on the Mac back in the day. It was this alternative to Adobe Photoshop that was a little sleeker, more modern design, worked well on Macs, and then eventually came over to Windows. Few years back. It is a very, I think, a full-featured editing app. Like I think it's more modern design than Adobe is, and it has the benefit of never really crashing. I've never had it crash on me. I've never had it really stall on me. So, whoever the developers are, kudos to you guys. You guys have created a great app. Either way, it's become one of the premier things for Windows users, Mac users, and I think they have an iPad app as well. That's again attuned for touch, which is one of the things that it was the first kind of thing to do before Adobe kind of rejiggered their apps for touch as well. With all that being said, Canva, which is your, I don't know, cookie cutter templated editing suite, usually for social media managers or marketing executives who need to draw plans or maybe show off a deck of proposed ideas for a marketing campaign or social media campaign. They go to Canva. Either way, Canva has become pretty big. It started in 2013. It was evaluated at 40-something billion about 2-3 years ago. It's about half that now, but it's still well above any other type of known startup software. I think it was on like Forbes is like top 10 most evaluated software companies or something in the last like 5-10 years, something like that. Either way, it's a big company. They partnered and bought Affinity. So now you can basically, I don't know if they've done any actual pricing changes or any differences right now, but yeah, I guess in the future, you'll be able to essentially get Canva and Affinity together, and they will have editing tools and software at every level for from beginner to professional to do editing software. I was writing, could this purchase finally compete with Adobe as far as what they offer? I want to get your take on editing tools and software just now before I get into some of the pricing and stuff.
Well, to me, editing tools and software, unless you're using one of these template-based services that you're talking about, it's a lot more challenging, I think, than it needs to be. And I think it scares a lot of people off sometimes because, we want these. We've seen what our YouTubers do, and everybody wants to be a content creator, and everybody can get in front of the camera and can do that part of the content, myself included. And when it comes time to dress it up, and put your intros and your outros and your lower thirds and all your effects and stuff, and things get a little harder. So I'm ready to see somebody challenge Adobe, one, to make it more consumer friendly, because I think sometimes Adobe is looked at as the ultimate in content creation, but a lot of its products are above the level of the basic consumer. And that's part of what I think has made Canva so attractive through the years. I've worked with a lot of bloggers in the last 10 years, and I have more Canva logins than I can ever possibly processed, in helping them. And Canva is very friendly. I want to see some of that friendliness fall into the Affinity suite. Bring us a little AI in there, mix it together, stir the witch's brew, if you will, and then, toss that at Adobe and say, look, here's what we have. And if you can do it, let's not be $50 a month. That'd be good.
Yeah, I wanted to get into some of the technical things about Canva and Affinity. Again, speaking as someone who is a Windows user, and I don't necessarily dabble in Final Cut all that often, the optimization for both is great. Canva is a web-based editing tool, which is a plus for anybody who's on a Windows PC, because again, that just means fewer necessary resources, downloads, installs necessarily. Now, again, you can get it as a web app from the Microsoft Store, but its size and weight, as far as resources are concerned for the Windows OS, is very small, and you can do a lot with it. Affinity can be also small, but it's very optimized for Windows. I have never really seen it lag or crash. The developers have done a great job. They've introduced Affinity 2, I believe. It's their massive overhaul and update for the platform. Affinity also has two other. There's its main app is Affinity Photo, which is its Photoshop competitor. But then there's Affinity Publisher, I believe, and Affinity Designer, kind of in line with your. I believe it's InDesign and Adobe's publisher tool. So if you're trying to, create a magazine or do a website or something like that, they have tools for those two. So, and again, in addition to Photoshop, you can also get some of the other higher end, more specified editing options. Now, Canva, I think, hosts around 175 million users right now, which is, again, still pretty big. The company says it, obviously with this purchase wants to do more, wants to offer an integrated stack. But they, to your point of the $50 a month thing, this is where I think, where I wrote my entire piece saying that perpetual license, I think, is preferred over the subscription model, even though subscription models are being shoved down our throats, because subscription models are the easiest way for companies to show continued growth and profit. It's the easier way for them to do that. They say, hey, we got everyone on subscriptions. Now we just keep raising the subscription price by $1, by $2, $2, $3, and we can show infinite growth at that point. If we have to try and charge that same amount per individual product throughout a cycle, you can have up cycles, you can have down cycles. So, Windows had this. Office had the same sort of issue with Microsoft when, Office 2013 came out versus 2017 or 2019. You could see whether or not the product was good and whether or not people were really agreeing with it. It was harder to measure. It was easier to measure success and failure. Now it's harder when you can just say, hey, everyone's on it. No one's really dropping off, and we just keep incrementally raising the price for it. That's what Adobe, for better or for worse, is starting to do. Affinity Photo, I believe you can get a individual license for the app itself for, I believe it's $59.99, and sometimes they have deals, so you can go check the Microsoft Store for those, and it can come all the way down to like $30, I believe, sometimes. You could also, I take that back. It's $64.99 for the one-time fee, and you can then put it on any PC or device that you need after that point, and you won't be charged again for it. The same thing goes for, Canva is actually a subscription model. They do offer a free version, which I think a lot of people, probably about 80% of that 175 million people use the free version because it's, again, mostly full featured, aside from maybe some 24-hour customer support and some AI admin managing stuff. You get basically the same you would get for the, I think the next license is $120 a year for one person. And then they have another offer for $240 a year for at least 2 minimum licenses. And then they have an enterprise level or whatnot. But what I said all this to say is that Canva also, when they purchased Affinity, made a pledge saying like, hey, we're going to keep offering Affinity for whatever the $64.99 version is, which is great. Because like I said, when you're looking at Adobe, which is charging you $59.99 a year if you don't have a student account or any kind of special discounts, that ends up costing you, I believe, what was that, $240 a year or something like that. I mean, it's costly.
Close to the $500.
Oh yeah. Well, there you go.
Yeah, exactly. for the whole thing.
Yeah. So, and you may not even need all the features. They do offer some packages where you can do, I think, individual apps for $9.99. So if you just need like Audition or Lightroom or Premiere Pro or something like that, you can pick those up. But you're still upwards of $30 just for those 3 apps. When there are different ways to do it. Either way, I think at the end of the day, this could be a good thing if Canva sticks to its pledge of perpetual licenses. And then I threw in because the big kicker for Adobe right now, I think you and I were talking off mic. One, it's Premiere Pro. That is its go-to. That is what everyone likes to run their benchmarks on when they test the new PCs and kind of see how powerful they are. And as we get into a world where YouTube, Twitch, and some other things are becoming bigger avenues of entertainment. More people are trying to create their own content, and they use these tools like Final Cut, Adobe Premiere, DaVinci Resolve to create stuff like this. And so Canva doesn't have anything like that just yet. But with their $25 billion evaluation and portfolio, maybe they go out and buy DaVinci Resolve, which I think has its own perpetual license for $295. A one-time purchase, $295 or $299, I think it is. If you decide to keep that pledge as well, at the end of the day, you're paying what, $299, $64 or whatever, and then you have the free version of Canva. I mean, you're out in 1 year roughly, is it $370 or 300? Yeah, but then you're not paying anything else for the remainder of your professional career, so to speak. And I think that is preferable to the endless monthly or yearly payments from Adobe. So hopefully they can. Yeah,
as long as neither, and I'm gonna, I hate to bring another company up in a negative light, but Filmora also does a similar thing to where you could buy a lifetime license. And if you remember, it was third quarter last year, they came out and said, hey, here's an update. Now pay for it. And there was a big YouTube revolt. I mean, there was nasty videos put up about Filmora, and they came out once and tried to justify their stance, and the videos got a little more aggressive, so Filmora had to back up and retool and go back to, hey, if you paid for a lifetime subscription, we'll take care of you. So I think this works as long as the affinity photos of the world keep that deal. Now, if you're going to charge me a lifetime subscription of $164.99 on version 2, and by the time you go to version 3, you want me to pay again, don't get me too close to that Adobe subscription, because that's going to make me think about it.
Oh, I totally agree. Yeah, and again, just to be clear for everyone who's listening, $164.99 is for all 3 apps. So it's a one-time fee for Adobe Affinity Photo, Affinity Designer, and Affinity Publisher. And I believe, as someone who uses the products, the last update was, I want to say, it's a 4-year difference. So again, we're getting similar to those inbox, Windows purchases or the inbox Office purchases, where they go years without being updated. But when they are updated, you get a different price for it. And you can choose to be like, hey, because again, Affinity, the original Affinity still works. The platform just doesn't have as many feature sets as the new one. So, it should be up to the person to be able to upgrade if they see fit. Same way with a car. You use your car for, 3 to 10 years or whatnot, and whether or not you are ready to invest more money into that car or get new experience, it's up to you at that point. So I'm all for this. I won't belabor the point anymore, but hopefully we'll see some ways of competition that force Adobe to maybe readjust their pricing or get their apps better optimized. Because again, we're going to be seeing DaVinci Resolve come to ARM, Affinity Photo should be, I believe, it's already ARM-based on the Mac. Canva is already web-based, so in Adobe, even as an on the Mac ARM-based version, still kind of chugs along. I think they need a kick in the pants in order to get their their apps and feature sets up to par. Our next thing is Xbox going to the PC with a new gaming hub.
Well, we're going to stay on the topic of software. Software is where the money is made, folks. You buy hardware one time, you buy software multiple times. In the typical fashion, we have the monthly update for Xbox and PC gamers, and now that April is here, the integration for PC users is what's on tap. Long story short, if you're an Xbox player, you can dial down to one of your games. Let's use Madden 24, for example. I'm a big Madden 24 player. You can dial down to Madden 24 And near about halfway down the screen, there's there's an option there that says community, and you can drill down the community. You can see some of your highlights, and you can see where your friends are playing the game, and you can see some of their highlights, and you can go in and leave little messages on like a little message board type infrastructure. It's a way to dig deeper into a single title, and I think it's pretty cool. Well, now you can do that for PC inside of the Xbox app. So if you're a PC user playing those PC games on PC Game Pass, you can now dig into those a little deeper using those features and get a little more info and connect with your friends inside that game hub, talk a little trash, have a little fun. The other interesting feature that came out finally, and I'm going to back our friend Paul Thurrott on this. He has preached this for at least a couple years now. Why OneDrive was not a part of Xbox. When you save your screenshots, your replays, why did they not save to OneDrive so when you get back to your PC, you can easily share them? You could easily manipulate them, throw them in your favorite editor, Affinity Photo or Adobe, for example, and put them out for your friends to see. Well, now, guess what? Those screenshots and those clips are finally saved to OneDrive where you can turn around to your favorite device, edit those, share those after you're done, having your fun and kicking butt. You can let everybody know about it, and you will get an alert on your Xbox should you have a storage issue with OneDrive or time to purchase more cloud storage. So yet another way to get this cloud thing paid for. But sort of notice, folks, how everything kind of is, woven together. You've got your AI, your Xbox, your gaming hub, now your OneDrive, your cloud, your OneDrive is on all your devices. Start paying attention, more so than we generally do, of how all these things integrate. They're just going to get tighter and tighter, but here's the thing. Over time, I'm willing to bet you they're going to get, as my buddy Kareem was talking about, that dollar here, dollar there, we're going to keep paying it.
It's unfortunate, but I don't have much else to add to this. I'm glad that that this is coming. I want to see better integration, more features.
Yes.
If we're going to be drained of our dollars slowly. So the OneDrive stuff is great. I think they tried that a little bit before, where they would hook up your automatic saves and screenshots and stuff like that to OneDrive. So again, I'm all for it. I'm going to move on to our next topic, which is some big claims from Intel. And we're going to get into our chip section right now, where Intel was hosting a Vision 2024 event earlier this week. And this is where they talked of AI acceleration for the enterprise, but they also dropped some hints about their next version of the ultra-core processor. I think we're currently living with the 14th gen ultra-core processor, and those are coming out in chips, and Microsoft just had a whole event about the Surface chips that are now using those. It's weird and interesting because I think as much as those chips have just come out, Intel's already talking about advancements that they're making beyond that, which kind of lends a little credence to the fact that they might have underestimated where AI was going to be at and how much people are going to use it or utilize it. Companies in specific, not you or I, but companies in general. One of the quotes that they had was Intel CEO Pat Gelsinger saying, "Innovation is advancing at an unprecedented pace, all enabled by silicon, and every company is quickly becoming an AI company. Intel is bringing AI everywhere across the enterprise, from PC to data center to the edge. Our latest Gaudi, Exxon, and Core Ultra platforms are delivering a cohesive set of flexible solutions tailored to meet the changing needs of our customers and partners, and we capitalize on the immense opportunity ahead." Now, that being said, this is kind of the reality of what was produced. I believe the new Qualcomm Snapdragon X Elite promises up to 45 TOPs of accelerated NPU performance, and we'll know about these roughly in about a month or so. And that's 75 TOPs across the CPU, GPU, and NPU. AMD's Ryzen Hawk point chipset offers 16 of those NPU performance, and Intel's first generation, which is the current one, the 14th gen that we're currently using, generation Core Ultra chips, codenamed Meteor Lake, only offered 10. So they were first out of the gate. They announced these chips, I believe, what was this, last summer? Started putting them into actual devices late November, December-ish, and now they're, more and more devices are coming out with them. And they're already talking about their second gen, which should be coming out this summer, being able to produce, I think they said 3 times as much as that. Now, who knows what will happen when we have these mix of 14 and 15 gen processors in the same, ether come fall, because they're announcing in summer. They'll probably release them in October-ish type time for other PCs. And again, Microsoft had this big push for its 14 gen in the Surface Pro and Surface Laptop 6 that are now coming out or whatever. But again, it's quite interesting to see that Gelsinger is announcing this as kind of a catch-up to what's going to be produced by Qualcomm X Elite. Because again, they are promising 75. The first gen only did 10 for Intel. So even if they did 3 times as much, they are coming up closer near where Qualcomm's already shooting for. And that's their second gen. So by the time they introduce the third, who knows where Qualcomm or AMD might be at. So, and I think it was reported at Thurrott as well. He was saying that, leaving aside the hyperbole in the statement, PC based on the X Elite chips will ship several months before Lunar Lake comes into the market. And AMD is also promising a 3x AI accelerated performance boost in their next gen chipsets. Intel is closing the AI performance gap this year, and indeed, it's important. But you can't help but see in them playing catch up, basically to whatever Apple's producing, because they're constantly refining the M series and beating their previous expectations. But Qualcomm and Apple are about to go off into the stratosphere because they're producing chips that will have be fanless and probably produce better battery life. That's never been Intel's strong suit on either. They are not the fanless, near fanless company or the arbiters of battery life. So with that being said, what are your thoughts on this, second gen ultra core performance chip, and whether or not where it will stand in the market once we see these Qualcomm chips?
I'm going to condense this as much as possible. I don't want to take too much of everybody's time here because I have a lot of thoughts on this running in the back of my head, but I want to stick to things that the consumer market will understand. Businesses know what AI is. They care about these AI chips, how fast AI is, what feature sets are in the chips to make it more efficient, etc. Businesses care. On the consumer level, you see AI like the background that we're using here in the video. Some of that's AI generated. You see the Surface Pro 5G version with the NPU in it, how it will adjust your audio for you, adjust your background. We see that at the consumer level. We see asking Copilot a question. We see asking Gemini a question and getting that response. But ultimately, consumer level only, who cares? Because when a consumer walks into Best Buy is going to do the best they can to hang the Intel banner. They're going to hang the AMD banner over here. They're going to hang the Snapdragon banner down here. This one is going to be efficient. These two are going to be competitive, and they're going to put whatever marketing spin on it that they're told to do. As a consumer looking at this, I understand as a tech enthusiast, as well as Kareem does, what these differences are what the benefits are, what Intel's trying to do, the fact that it feels like, as Paul Thurrott said, they're playing catch up. But when that device hits the shelf and it's in the box, even for some businesses out there, because you have to remember, the people that are making the purchases at the business level might not always be the tech enthusiast. To me, this feels a little bit confusing at this point. It's confusing competitive. That's the best way I know to put it, because AMD has not thrown their, sauce in the pot yet and mixed it up as to what they're going to call all of theirs as these AMD, the 7000 series and now the 8000 series. They're tacking that name on the AI. To me, this is confusing at the consumer level unless you're a tech enthusiast. And I think when it comes down to, we're still going to go back and do what we've always done. What's the most bang for your buck? What fits my need? If it's the new Intel chip, that's what consumers are going to buy. I think for now, this AI thing sort of gets skipped over a little bit until there's a little more education about what it can do, the benefits, and teaching people how to use it and how to make, the most of it, because AI is easy for Kareem and I. We use it daily. I do. But consumers, they're just not there yet. They're still, looking at the marketing material. They're still looking at their use case. And most of all, with inflation, what it is, they're still holding their wallet in their hand. And, it's a combination that's got to be mixed together. And I don't know who wins. And it's a great feeling, actually. I don't know who wins. Last year, year before, I could say, hey, AMD's in the fight. And I had my reasons. And then, year before that, Intel's in the fight. I had my reasons. I don't know who's going to win this fight. So that's why I'm thinking it's going to come down to the consumer decision, not necessarily a spec sheet.
Yeah, to your point, and I'm going to wrap this up as quickly as I can. I think it's hard for us in the industry to talk about consumers because we are long past that specifically. I think consumers know what they want, and they may not know how to express it necessarily with their purchase power. I think you and I talked about this off mic. Is that it's similar to Apple versus Microsoft, where this development cycles kind of worked for one company at a time and then switched and worked for a different company at a different time when Apple figured out mobile and Microsoft didn't. I believe this is Qualcomm and Intel. Intel was built for the desktop PC where things were kind of third-party support and localization for a lot of things for their chipsets. I think people now want their PCs to be more like their phones, where these integrated things kind of work and they just work in the background. Again, as far as AI and machine learning is concerned, they just want things to work in the background. They necessarily want a marketing slide saying, hey, this is where you go on your PC to do this thing. It should just do it, just kind of like the phone does. And Qualcomm was in a position to create chips that were catered towards that. They had chips that needed to process background noise because they were on a phone. People were on a phone. Like voice isolation was a thing that they had to take into consideration when they made their chips. Same thing for modems as well, and for the way that they optimized screen and battery performance, and the way that screens were lit, and the fact that these devices wouldn't be connected to an outlet for hours on end. They built their chips with all those considerations. Where at the time, Intel, when it was making its money, didn't have to really necessarily do that. They just had to support drivers for devices that did all that extra heavy work on its own, like microphones. They just had to support the driver that plugged into it, because the person who created the microphone did all the extra work as far as voice isolation and all these things that we're about to see come from this Windows 11 update as far as AI is concerned and NPUs or whatnot. So they're working backwards trying to backfill a lot of this stuff, and it's they're doing an admirable job. They're just not moving as quickly as Qualcomm is as far as adding the PC components, because again, they started with mobile already, and now you're just asking them to make a more performant chip. and it seems to be easier for them to do that. And again, I just think it's the turn of the tides. Microsoft pivoted towards cloud um, when the operating systems became a thing of the past, and they had lost out on mobile. It just it bears to see where Intel pivots, because I think they'll continue making chips just like Microsoft continues to make Windows. But it may not. I think their whole fab process is going to be their second. Uh, their midlife crisis, so to speak. This is where they will do their pivot into something different while they continue to still make chips. I just don't know if their chips will always be as performant as what Qualcomm is, because again, they just start off at two different bases and they're working in two different directions to kind of meet the consumer. That being said, let's move on to Google announcing their chips. We're talking about more chips, ladies and gentlemen. More chips. What do you got for us?
Chips. Arm everywhere, and I promise you, folks, I wish it was, but it's not potato chips. What we have here is Google has announced their new AI chip, Axion, for the data center. And if you recall, this kind of leans on the fact that Microsoft announced their data center chip a few months ago. If you watch the Microsoft event online, Satya Nadella brings out the demo network cabinet, shows their chips, and shows how they're going to be used to process, guess what? AI, and they're going to do it cooler, they're going to do it more efficient. Well, now Google says, hey, we want to get in on this too, and we've got our own version. So, under the hood, the Axion has a titanium purpose-built controller that allows you to offload. This is what I thought was neat and a little bit techy. Offload some of the storage and I/O functions going on in your server to a separate chip, leaving more of the CPU functions available for AI and processing. Long story short, Google sees this as a win for their investment because these chips are cooler, these chips are more efficient, these chips will supposedly, as we discussed, will outperform current data center chips by up to 50% and will be up to 60% more efficient. Now, unfortunately, these chips are not consumer based. Only Google can hold on to these numbers and massage these numbers for what they are, and they can control what goes on your invoice because you have this new shiny named thing in your Google Cloud. But you can head over to Google Cloud now, get a feel for it. They are available, and you can even use the Google built-in services at Google Cloud to migrate your current workload to some of these ARM-based chips, assuming your software, of course, is compatible. So Google says the workloads that matter most to companies need to be running on ARM everywhere. Makes you think about that, doesn't it, folks? I mean, I don't want to get into the details of, the nitty gritty of the chip has this and the chip has that. I understand that most of our viewers would not understand that level, but as we mentioned off camera, we're getting more and more ARM. ARM is here. We've talked about it for 5 years. Microsoft started the discussion with Windows on ARM. Now we've gone, Windows on ARM is the thing. Now we've gone on, hey, Windows on ARM is where we're going. It's useful. Now we're putting our server hardware on ARM. So it kind of, all loops together back to what my buddy Kareem was saying. Intel, where are you? Where you been? Where you going? AMD, where you going? It's going to get interesting.
This is a direct shot at Intel, somewhat.
Yes.
As I just mentioned about 3 minutes ago, Intel's pivoting. So they could see an opportunity here because while it is going to cut into what they already produce as server chips, and that's kind of where they made a strategic investment when they realized that they couldn't really compete in mobile when they tried to make mobile chips. They went straight in servers, and it's been working well for them. This fab pivot could also be a benefit to them, because if people do choose this Google version, I don't know if Google has the resources to keep up with demand. So if they can let Intel do the fabbing for it, and Intel charges them a certain amount to create the chips that, these ARM chips, whatever, it's still sort of a win-win to a lesser degree for Intel, because they are now using their labs or whatnot to create the amount, the volume that these Google chips could probably use. The same thing for Microsoft, TSMC, and necessarily Qualcomm in the US or whatnot. So again, where we saw Microsoft kind of ease off of Windows and say, hey, Azure is our platform. Just whatever you build, whatever you need as far as data centers or servers, or if you needed the space or the resources to create video games or whatever, we're not just everything needs to be developed for Windows. It's put everything on our cloud. With any and everything you can, put it on our cloud. I think this is where Intel kind of makes that strategic decision, like, hey, we're not going to compete. We're necessarily not going to compete performance-wise, chipset to chipset. But if you were a chip maker at any type of volume, we have established over the last, I don't know, how old is Intel? Like 80 years old, something like that. However old the company is, we've invested into our fabs and into our labs to create chips at volume. You're not going to be able to do that just yet. Let us help you. And it's a win-win for both companies. So partnership, exactly. It'll be interesting to see how these chips compete and where Google sells them at, especially again with Microsoft already doing their own, AMD still in there, and NVIDIA. This is the unspoken person in the room who's I think they reached over $90 billion valuation or something like that, or 900 billion. I mean, they reached some astronomical number when AI became a thing. So they are definitely in this game for server chips in the future. So we'll see where these.
I think they're watching and laughing a little bit, if you want.
Probably.
That's and I'm not trying to give a cute response here. I honestly believe what's currently powering and has currently powered our AI models up until now. It was perfectly clear that NVIDIA GPUs have and are being used to run our current models, because we had the deal of when ChatGPT first came out, you would get the message that things was overloaded, and they came out and said, look, we need more GPUs. NVIDIA, we need more GPUs. I think if anybody has a hand on what it takes to make these AI workloads run, it's NVIDIA. And I think they're just sitting on that cash cow, where us gamers have gone out there and bought all these 4090s and 4080s at $2,000 a pop. I think they're sitting on that cash cow going, we know what it takes. We're going to let you guys figure out what you think you know. and then we're going to come in there and say, here, we're going to throw our stew in and say, here's how you do it. And I think they're going to push everybody to go to that next level. And I'll end by saying this. What have we always said? Competition works out for the consumer. And the last 5 years, I'll even go say the last 7, 8 years, what do we see every year? Intel 10th gen, Intel 11th gen, AMD this gen, AMD this gen, and there's always talk of what these other folks might do. And we've always said, one day these other folks are going to step up and say, hey, we're here. Well, the NVIDIAs of the world, the ARMs of the world have been sitting in the offices while AMD and Intel are doing these spec bumps. Now they have brought their product to the table, and everybody is turning back and looking at that table and going, well, there's a little more work to do. You kind of came out a little bit ahead of us here. And the thing that catches me is like you just said, they're doing it at all levels. They're doing it at the portable level. They're doing it at the desktop level. Now they're doing it at the server level. It used to be that you could give Intel, and Intel would be happy. Give them the server level. They wouldn't complain much when the AMD was out there pushing the desktop level. Then it kind of flipped. AMD got quiet for a while. The AMD EPIC CPU for servers came out. Intel goes back to the drawing board. They bring out the E series and the 622s for those server folks out there. Okay, now we've got something to play. But now they've got a whole different level of competition out there that has popped up out of nowhere. And I think they have come out with a lot more than people anticipated. And I think for the next few years, it's going to be I don't know the term that I'm looking for. It's I can do a little bit better than you each time.
The one-upsmanship.
The one-up, and it's going to be fun to watch.
Agreed. With that being said, we're going to move on to our final topic, which is Microsoft Build. The sessions list came out a few days ago, and for those of us who are Windows consumers, there is a lot to be happy about. There hasn't been over the past few years, admittedly. Microsoft has moved strategically into the realm of heavily into quantum computing, obviously in AI. There was that 1 year that we all were drunk and did the metaverse for a little bit. We are no longer doing that, but we are now back to focusing Windows on ARM. And there was some hints that Microsoft is, really investing in this. I believe that The Verge reported that Microsoft is going to be holding an event the day before Build, where they showcase the Surface. It's called a Surface and AI event. We'll be showcasing the new Surface Pro, probably with AI and ARM chips specifically. The Surface Laptop 6 with Surface chips only, really. These, we talked about Intel chips, or the Intel Surfaces being announced last month. Now Microsoft is going to be holding a specific event where they only delineate these new versions as consumer versions, which only offer Windows and ARM. This is how big Microsoft's investing in Windows and ARM. Normally each year they do a Surface device with Intel, perhaps AMD, and then they'll have a one-off of the Pro version on Qualcomm, because again, they're not necessarily confident in that. They know people need Intel, but for whatever reason this year, they are very confident about their Windows and ARM. This new Qualcomm chip producing and providing consumers, again, people who don't know better, they just know that the device needs to do these certain things, that this new platform, Windows and ARM, or not new, but updated platform, Windows and ARM, will be able to produce that. Some of the build sessions that have kind of, lit a fire under the idea that, we're going to be seeing a big investment in that, are listed as, I believe one session is called Introducing the Next Generation of Windows and ARM. Another one's called Bring Your Copilot to Life with a customized visual identity. Build richer experiences with Copilot in Windows. Develop your first Copilot plugin for Windows for your Windows app. Designing for a brand new Windows AI feature. How to create superior experiences with UI and WPF, and developer experience improvements in Windows. So again, I think the number of things that I just showcased right there, these are just a couple that kind of stuck out. Would have been the entirety of Windows development sessions over the last 5 years. They like I said, they had really tamed down the emphasis of Windows development and kind of led everyone to Azure development, which, again, I'm assuming with this new event happening a day before, they're still going to be talking a lot about Azure. They'll be talking a lot about Copilot and AI, but in terms of those of us who use Windows, these are great to know that they're pushing developers to explore Windows on ARM, because they are only going to be really only offering devices to consumers with Windows on ARM as the only option, and they're in Windows AI. They're supposed to, I think, maybe this event will showcase Windows AI Explorer, I believe it's called, or File Explorer, which is the thing that acts as a computer version timeline, where you're able to access everything that's happened on that PC. And you'll be able to do it through natural language to bring up certain prompts or get certain responses from Windows Copilot. So if it's, hey, I got an email from David last week talking about pricing schedules for our enterprise office suite, and I need to compare that to last year. You'll be able to type that in, and this Explorer feature should be able to go gather all communications, all files, if there's PDFs or if there's screenshots or any of that kind of stuff that has the correct labeling. It'll grab all that stuff and put it into a context saying, hey, here it is for you. Here's the comparisons that you guys needed. And if need be, I can create an Excel doc that'll put it side by side in a graph chart for you, showing you the increase in price that you guys paid from last year or from this year to last year. That's the promise. That's the future that Windows is, Microsoft's going to try and sell, I assume, at Build. What are your thoughts?
Two things. One, I just got a question for you. When we were drunk last year, what was in your cup? I want to apologize real quick. Speaking of cups, I was just getting a sip of water, and I thought I had hit the mute button, but my mouth was right beside it. So if you heard me sipping water there, I'm sorry.
I think people are listening to my beautiful promise of a hands-free Windows experience, where you just use your voice to navigate your PC and tell it to do all the hard work that you normally have to do.
Well, you must really be drinking that cup today.
This may still be my Metaverse cup. Who knows? I didn't switch it from last year or the year before, so that's my bad.
I will say this. I think what we're seeing is the culmination of a couple years' work, and I think we're going to start to see that at Build. Not to belabor the point, we've had AI for roughly 2 years now. At least they talk of AI. We've had several models. We've had more advancements of it than we can count. Now, as we have talked about several times here in the podcast, we've got the hardware out there with AI built into it. As with any development, and I use that term with quotes around it, now it's time for the software devs to get out there, get creative, get with the UI designers, and start producing new things, new ways of computing. We have talked about it. We have discussed it. Now it's, the developers have the tools, and that's part of what Build is about. Last year when we watched Build online, when we wrote it up, there was all these demos of what AI could be, what the vision for AI was. In the past year, we have seen a lot of these demos come to life, and we could see that we need a little hardware to make this efficient, to get this out to more people. And that's where our chip makers came in. They have produced this for us. Now it's time for the developers to take the entire platform that they showed us these dreams and these wishes of what AI could be, and build it and put it in, into our operating system, in Windows, in Google Chrome, in Mac. Since we're talking about Build, it's specific to Windows. Put it in there, see how it works, see what consumers think of it. I think that this is why we haven't heard Windows 12 yet. I think we might hear rumblings of Windows 12 at Build. I don't think there'll be any demos or any formal announcements. But I think this is where Microsoft was waiting to see where we would get to. How far would we get to this point? How quickly would we get to this point? Windows 12 is on the radar. We may hear about it at Build. But I think what we're seeing is Windows is just a platform where this stuff will run. Windows is the platform that we will interface with. And I think that's where we are. Is AI is out there, the hardware is out there. Now it's up to the developers to say, now let's interface it together, as you mentioned with the new, File Explorer. That is one feature that I can't wait to get my hands on, because my folders sometimes get to be a mess and document names when you're in a hurry. You jot down that document name that is comfortable for that day and that moment, but you don't remember that a week later, a month later, 6 months later, and you have to open 4 documents to find one and go, oh, that was it. And then you remember that you named that document that way on that specific day for that reason. And that is where a Copilot will come in and say, this is the data that's in this document that you're looking for. I'll be happy to organize it for you if you will tell me how. And that's when your spreadsheets get produced, your OneNote gets produced, your Loop gets produced, and it brings everything together, because we're in a world, and I'm going to stop here, we're in a world where information is almost too much. I mean, we wake up every day and we consume. And I don't know about you, when I get to 10, 11 o'clock at night, whether I've done a lot of work that day or not, I'm tired, because we consume so much. You can't remember it all. So the Copilots of the world will be there in my operating system when I get up the next day or the next Monday morning to help me organize all this data that 10 years ago I didn't know I was going to have to deal with.
No, I agree with you. I'm going to button this up by just saying that, to your point of Windows 12, I think we're watching the development of Windows 12 right now. I think you take the perspective of what else in an operating system denotes a huge upgrade. I think what they're doing is they're tacking on Copilot as the feature set for what would have been Windows 12. So Windows 11 is basically getting its feature set built into Copilot, and Copilot will transfer across. We're going to see Windows 10 get this as some of this at some point. So instead of getting Windows 12, we're going to get Windows 11 with Copilot, and Copilot is just going to keep getting features. So Windows 11 may, unironically be the last version of Windows that gets the big, here's the Windows, because again, aside from some UI changes and perhaps maybe some sharing features between mobile and the operating system itself, there's not a lot in an operating system that needs to be updated or bring new features to. Can you think of a feature that you're like, hey, you know what? This operating system would be more complete if it had this feature. Again, if it doesn't involve sharing something with your mobile phone, like bringing text onto the PC or somehow, or sharing photos or content between the two devices. I think the operating systems are, they're pretty built and stable. This Copilot feature, though, is getting a bunch of new features to make your operating system more efficient for you, to customize it towards you, to make it yours. So I don't know if we're necessarily going to see this whole big, blowout of Windows 12 as an operating system, but we will continue to see Copilot get new things. And like I said, with that being said, we want to thank you guys for joining us for another week. We're going to get you guys out and about for your day. Where can people find you to continue this conversation, or maybe where you'll be posting some more thoughts about this?
I would love to. David PHA 1978 finally made it to Threads. Threads is a nice place. I should have been there sooner. Yep, he finally got me there, folks. I'm over on Threads, and I'm hanging out on Twitter, or X, formerly known as Twitter. Whatever that platform is being called this week, I can be found over there. I do not have a blue check mark, do not want one, do not plan to earn one. But you are welcome to go over and say hello, have some comments, and if in the process we talk enough that Elon decides that I deserve a blue check mark, then I will take it.
I am also on Twitter and Threads as well, and I always compare the two as like Gotham versus Metropolis. X or Twitter is that Gotham, that always dark, always rainy, always depressing looking social media site, but you're there and you're surviving. And Threads for me right now is the Metropolis. It's much brighter. It's much more fun to be on. Don't get me wrong. Disaster strikes both. The Arbiter, I think. I'm not trying to make the comparison that Elon is Batman or that Mark Zuckerberg is Superman. I just think that as far as every day is concerned, I feel like I have more brighter days on Threads. I talk more about comics and things that are less political and less negative on Threads. But again, X has its purpose for those of you who are using that at Twitter. So you can find me at Mindhead1 on Twitter, Kareem Anderson on Threads. And then you can obviously go to our website to read our editorials, our musings, our reviews, which we will have plenty. We'll be having some PC, some gaming stuff. I finally got the Nova Legion Go back, and I am reviewing that, and it is a joy. So I will be giving you my thoughts about that. And maybe I'll jump on X or Twitter or Threads to kind of give you some day-to-day musings about this device, because it's really fun. Other than that, you guys go out, have a good week. We'll see you again next week.
Have a good weekend, everybody.